I said, I know it looked good, that I was sounded good that I was going to do this, but I'm really scared. I really don't know if this is something that I can do. That whole first year, there were moments of wonderfulness, and then there's moments of terrible mishaps that I had to figure out how to get out of it. Focus on what you're good at, what you want to achieve, and go for that. Don't look at what is missing in your life, and don't focus on the gaps that are whatever's gonna hold you back. I ended up in a situation where I met this man on a trail. He turned out to be a very bad person. I could have been one of his victims. Kenny, I'm a firm believer that the universe looks out for all of us. If I could give anybody advice who's going through a divorce, you can go through anger and sadness, but let it go.
Hey there, adventure seekers. I'm Kenny, host of the Novel World Travels podcast, where I'll explore the transformative power of experience. Dive deep with me as I chat with extraordinary people, uncovering the lessons hidden in their journeys, the good, the bad, and the life-changing. Live vicariously, embrace new perspectives, and grow along with me on the Novel World Travels podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the Novel World Travels podcast. Today I'm joined by my friend Jo, a remarkable woman who has found healing and growth through her nomadic lifestyle. After a divorce in 2020, Jo embarked on an inspiring journey, spending 6 months a year traveling across the country in her camper with Roxy, her doggy companion. From the Rocky Mountains to the untamed deserts, Jo's trek across America has been a transformative adventure. Her travels have allowed her to embrace nature, grow as an individual, and uncover the profound power of healing and self-discovery through new experiences. Join me as I dive into Jo's captivating story of overcoming adversity, pursuing her wanderlust dreams, and evolving through the lens of her life on the open road. Thanks for joining me, Jo.
Thanks, Kenny.
All right, let's get started. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Hampshire, a city called Manchester.
Yeah, did you get any opportunities to visit other places when you lived there or growing up?
No, actually, my parents couldn't afford to travel too far, so we didn't do a lot of traveling. I mean, I think our summers were based on our summer vacations were like going a few states south to Connecticut and visiting family. And so, yeah, we didn't do a whole lot of traveling.
You visited family, and if I'm not mistaken, you're ethnically Greek, right?
Right. My
Eh,
both parents and both sets of grandparents are full Greek.
Does your Greek heritage influence your identity at all?
Yes, it definitely does. I mean, growing up, we were very much into the Greek culture. I mean, we're Greek Americans, so but we always celebrated like Greek Easter, and um, especially when my parents were alive, we were very, very much into our ethnic background.
Yeah, and how do you hold on to any of that culture nowadays?
Well, I've kind of lost a little bit of it, but it's interesting. I have a younger brother, and an older sister who embrace it very much, much more than I do, and they've adopted it into their lives. So when I'm with them, we'll celebrate together.
Have you been to Greece?
Yes, I've been to Greece twice with my family, and I
What was
have
that like?
relatives over there.
What was that like?
Wonderful. The best part of Greece was seeing my father meet his first cousin for the very first time in years. And they had a bottle. He pulled out a bottle it was like one of those big 2-liter Sprite bottles, but it was full of this homemade wine, Greek wine that they made. And they just proceeded to have a wonderful time, and we were dancing in the house, and just lots of Greek culture coming out. It was beautiful.
All right, what's up with that food? I love Greek food. I mean, is that a great memory for you, or?
Oh, yes, it is. It is. But over the years, my father was a really good cook, and he kind of modified the food to make it a little bit healthier because although Mediterranean food is extremely healthy, I mean, I just
Hmm.
bought a cookbook that is about for the Mediterranean diet. Um, so I think a lot of that food is healthy, but there's also limitations that I have in my own diet. So
Sure, sure. So you grew up in New Hampshire. You didn't travel much. If I'm not mistaken, you went to college and eventually had got married, had kids.
mhm.
Um, how long were you married?
I was married for 30 years.
30 years. And
Mhm.
if I'm not mistaken, within those 30 years, you and your husband at the time had had dreams of travel across the country.
We did. I mean, we as a family did some traveling. I mean, because my husband grew up uh, traveling a lot more than I did, and so he was an influence on my life with traveling and an outdoor adventure. And then, so the four of us, with my he and my two daughters, would do some traveling. But then as we got older, we always said that, we were getting close to retirement. We said, you know, it would be nice to travel in the wintertime, do some traveling. So we bought a little travel trailer. It's an Airstream base camp. It's only 16 feet. Yeah. And it sat in the driveway for 3 years. Didn't do much traveling because we were still both working quite a bit.
Really? And did you have an idea of where you all planned on traveling?
Well, we always, both of us are very fond of going west, the Colorado, Arizona. Our two daughters ended up in California. So um, that certainly was a motivation for us to head west. Um,
So you said the camper sat there for most of 3 years. Did you happen to take any trips in it?
we took one trip together,
One trip.
my husband and I. Yeah. We took one trip to Montana, and it was a hunting fishing trip with our dog, Roxy.
Eh, Oh, cool. So it was a hunting fishing trip. So growing up and not traveling very much, and then when you got married, you um, connected with an individual who did travel and have different experiences. What was that like for you? Was it exciting? Was it outside of your comfort zone?
It was definitely exciting for me because I think I had some adventure in me, but I just never grew up with it. Like I was never taken out on hiking or camping. It was something that I learned much later in life. And then my husband, of course, had all that background, and including, he was a hunter, and he was, a fly fisherman, and he sailed and he skied, and I was introduced to all that at much later age, like in my late 20s.
But eventually, that your marriage unfortunately ended, and then you sort of had a new outlook on life. But in hindsight, before we move on, in hindsight, that one trip you took, um, what did that trip mean for your marriage, and how long before you separated did that trip happen?
So I don't remember. I believe that trip happened in 2017, and then we ended up separating in 2020, because my husband felt that that was the point at which he felt something that wasn't right between us, I guess. And but I thought we had two different perspectives. I really and thought it was the best trip ever. um, and he felt differently. So it was, for me, it was wonderful to be out on the river, and we bought a raft and floated on the Colorado River, and it was just wonderful. I I loved being at the helm and steering the boat and everything while he fished. So I definitely gained a lot from it, from the
That sounds like a
experience.
cool experience. Um, and as a person who's sort of the host and conducting the interview, I know that I don't want to stay on some things too long, but I know that some of these things can be a bit hurtful. But I think prefacing I'm not sure if I could get that word right, but like give it a preface for the your future adventures is important for other people to hear. And so your relationship ended in 2020, and you had a really good friend that your ex-husband decided to they had their own relationship and it ended with you. Um,
Hmm.
and so how did the end of your marriage influence the decision to explore for 6 months out of the year? And how long did it take between the time you separated and then you first went on your first season of traveling?
So we separated in May of 2020, and for 2 months, it was such a thing that came at such a surprise to me, and and it was just almost a shock. So the for 2 months, the only thing that really helped me out was just taking walks in the woods and being by myself. Well, I was with Roxy, but having that time to sort of process what the heck just happened to me. And so there was a lot of sadness, a lot of tears, a lot of trying to figure things out, but I was compelled to do it alone, not with my friends or even reach out to my brother or sister. I felt the need to just be with myself, and try to sort things out. So that took place. And then I started reaching out to friends and family and sharing with them what's happened to me. I think, well, then by November, I had decided to, I'm going to either, I'm going to either sink with this or swim. And I guess I decided to swim because saw that camper and I was like, well, this is something we've always wanted to do. And what I need is to just get away and I'm going to go and do it. And, I decided from November to May, I was thinking I've always wanted to do a long-term camp, extended camp with the camper. And, it always looked good on paper. I remember the night before I was about to leave, I was playing ping pong with a friend, and he came over one last time to play ping pong, and he found me like crying, and I said, I know it looked good that I was sounded good that I was going to do this, but I'm really scared. I really don't know if this is something that I can do. The Back in 2017, when we went together, he did all the driving. He did everything that needed to be done with the camper. I really knew nothing about the camper and how to drive it or anything. So my friend said, you can do this. You've got this. And it was almost like I stepped in and really committed myself without being able to turn back. And so I just went for it.
So there was a sense of uncertainty at first.
Oh, for sure. Well,
Yeah.
a sense of certainty that I could do this. And then when it got down to it, there was a definite uncertainty. Like, what am I doing? How can I, is it even risky for me to be traveling alone on the road?
I
How will I
know first
navigate all this? Yeah.
Yeah, I know firsthand how fear and apprehension could create that other voice that says, maybe you can't do this, or maybe you shouldn't do this. How did you push past those voices or the feeling of uncertainty and launch out anyway?
A couple of things happened. One is that I had a friend in the neighborhood who I reached out to a lot. He seemed to have he was an older man that had a lot of wisdom, and I just loved the wisdom in his words. And I think that his words were giving me some strength and also belief that I have the strength and courage within me to do this. So that was one thing that helped. The other was just I have some friends that live down in Massachusetts, and I thought, okay, I'm not going to just jump in the camper and go. I'm going to at least make it from New Hampshire to Massachusetts and see how that goes. Even though I was planning to eventually go across country, so I took it in steps. And once I got to Massachusetts, I had a friend say, I said, well, here's he pulled out the manual and he helped work things out with me. So leaning on friends helped a lot. And then just jumping in with both feet. I think, once I got on the road, I sort of tried to figure it out from there.
That's a brilliant way to take it. You were just take it step by step. Let me go down from New Hampshire to Massachusetts, and piece by piece, and rely on your friends. And you said, you know what, I have enough confidence to kind of dive deep, and we'll see what happens. So is that pretty
Hmm.
much the way it went?
Yeah, yeah. And then, of course, along the way, the first year, there was a lots of mishaps and lots of learning points. There was I don't know if you want me to share any of those
Yeah,
or.
let's hear. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So, well, just driving my next friends were in Pennsylvania. So I thought, okay, from Massachusetts, I'll go to Pennsylvania. And what I didn't realize was that campers weren't allowed on the parkways. I didn't even know what a parkway was. And there was one point where there was a sign saying there was an 8-foot bridge, low clearance 8-foot bridge on this parkway that I wasn't supposed to be on. And I'm like, I don't even know how tall my camper is. So
Wow.
right before that bridge, that overpass, that I was going to go under, I decided to pull over, and I took an exit, and it was really congested, but I somehow maneuvered into this convenience store parking lot and Googled how tall is my camper, and sure enough, it was 8 foot 4 inches. so
Oh wow, you were
so
close.
so I would have gotten scalped, but luckily I survived that, and I somehow maneuvered to figure out how I could get back on I-95, where I think I was supposed to stay on and to get to Pennsylvania. So,
The universe was looking out for you that day.
Kenny, I'm a firm believer that the universe looks out for all of us. If you have belief in that, I just, I'm not to say that I'm going to be reckless, but at least, if I put my best foot forward and try to look at and try to make the right decisions, or be open to be guided to make the right decisions, I think that makes a huge difference.
I love that. I agree with you. So other than a little fear, a little apprehension and anxiety, how did it feel to finally hit the road and bring this long term goal and dream of cross country travel? Like how did it feel to actually embark on that?
It felt wonderful, but I still had a big learning curve.
Hmm.
So that whole first year, there were moments of wonderfulness, when I'd reach a place and go hiking in beautiful country. And then there's moments of like terrible mishaps that I had to figure out how to get out of it. Um,
So before we continue on, what kind of camper do you have, and what sort of amenities do you have to live with?
I have just a very small camper that I tow behind a Toyota Highlander. The camper is called it's made by Airstream, and it's only 16 feet in length. But it has all the amenities that I feel I need. It has a bed, a queen size bed that's supposed to convert into a dinette area, but I never convert it because I don't need the dinette area. It's too hard to convert. I can just eat my meals on my bed. And then it has a 2 burner stove, a refrigerator, a sink, um, and a wet shower with a toilet. And I converted the wet shower to a closet because the one thing it was lacking was storage. So, and I could find showers anywhere. If I want to go to a campground, then I'll go take a shower in a campground, let's say.
Gotcha.
So,
That's pretty
yeah,
cool. So it has enough for you. And
hmm
what goes in before we launch out on your travels? What goes into planning for 6 months of travel? I mean, how does your first year look as opposed to your fourth year, which was last season? I mean, what do you
yeah.
do? What do you prepare? What happens to your home? Yeah, what goes into all that?
Well, so my home I rent from November to May, and so while I'm on the road, I'm getting a little bit of income from my rental, and also they're taking care of the place if something goes wrong. Um, so I prepare it to be rented, and then as far as preparing for the road, I mean, obviously I equip my camper with what I need for the road, which is minimal. And then I don't make any long plans. I mean, I know that I'd like to be at a certain place to have Thanksgiving with my daughters, and that's the first plan. So from November 1st to Thanksgiving, I am moving about the country in any way I want. I just need to get to California by then. So that's the beauty of having a small camper, is that I don't have to plan way far in advance like some people who have big campers. I can just find out what the weather looks like in the direction I want to go, and if it looks good, and there's so many apps out there now that can help you determine the weather along the road and the places where you can camp.
What apps do you use to kind of guide your decisions to where you go next?
So there's an app that I love called Campadiem, and that's one app. There's the Dirt. There's another one that Overlander I just learned about. There's so many different camping apps out there. And then once I choose a place, and I often try to not camp in a campground because I mean, once I get out to like the West, like Arizona and beyond, or Colorado and beyond, there's so much public land that you can camp on. So I just Camp-A-Diem will show you where the public land is as well. And I tend to gravitate towards camping out on the public lands because I like the solidarity of it all. So
So you don't have any solid plans. You just kind of choose your next place as as you feel. I mean, that sounds like some real freedom right there. I
it's a
mean,
wonderful freedom, and yeah, I stay, maybe I can choose how long I want to stay in an area depending on how interested I am in 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 the what's around it. So
what
sometimes I'll stay, 3 days. Sometimes I'll just move the next day. Especially trying to get across. There's I typically go. down Virginia, where I have a niece and her family, and I want to visit them. And then from Virginia, because it's winter, I go the southern route, but I go west, but I take more of the southern route across.
Gotcha.
So I sort of beeline it across to at once until I get to New Mexico. Then from New Mexico, Arizona on, I really like to take my time and play around in those states.
So you like to marinate out there in the West. What drew you to explore the American West? It seems like that's a place of interest for you.
Yes.
And on top of that, what are some of your favorite places out there?
So I just love um different terrain. I love the desert. I never really experienced the desert, but there's something about the desert that to me is just beautiful. And in the wintertime, I my camper needs to stay where it's warm. So my favorite places are Joshua Tree, Death Valley, Valley of Fire State Park. Where else? Those are places I can think of off the top of my head.
That's cool. I've heard a lot about those. Especially you told me about Joshua Tree, which sounds really cool, and I definitely want to hit up Death Valley one of these days. What's
Mhm.
so in all this travel, you're moving forward, you're learning and just experiencing America or in the world in the present. What's a particularly meaningful experience you've had while on the road?
Well, every time I'm faced with a challenge, I feel like that's a meaningful experience. I mean, I know that there's and like one year, I had to maneuver, like I got very sick on the road. Um, and I had to figure out how was I going to keep moving or deal with being sick while on the road. Um, Another year was, I had mishaps with my camper um, and my car, and they would cost me a tremendous amount financially. But what I learned about myself was that I like I never realized this because I always had my husband, who was the problem solver in the family. He was Mr. Fix It. He was he was the one that could figure things out, and I kind of relied on him. And what I realized is that I actually have a lot of that in me that I didn't even know about. So to me, that's extremely meaningful to know that I can I can actually problem solve and try to fix things, or seek out the help I need to get things fixed. So I think that's really a meaningful thing. That makes me feel like I've grown within myself to know that I don't have to depend on somebody else.
That's beautiful, and you're beating me to my questions. My next question was to ask you what you've learned about yourself, and I think hardships and challenges and things like that inevitably help you grow, and you can't help but learn from those experiences. And sometimes you have to kind of go through things that are challenging to grow. I mean, in any aspects of life, lifting weights, if you're lifting weights and you're trying to gain muscle, you have these little micro tears in your muscle, and it's in a sense it's destructive to you, but you heal and you add more cells and your muscles grow, whether and I think that applies to your mental muscle or your heart muscle, and metaphorically. And I think
Mhm.
in so many ways you're when you have challenges, I mean, not too many things come to you easily and you grow from them. You kind of gotta have to kind of deal with some sort of adversity or challenge of some kind. And and I think people shouldn't be afraid to deal with those things or to approach those things. I think so. The I have people that I have known, and including myself, I'm not going to exclude myself from this, that have been afraid to encounter challenges, afraid to do things or afraid of things that may or may not happen. But
Mhm.
you don't really live life and you don't really have freedom if you stifle your life or your progress to avoid adversity, because
Mhm.
adversity inevitably helps you grow.
Mhm.
So I like hearing that, and that you're not afraid to encounter those times. And I can't imagine what it's like to be sick on the road. Like when I think of traveling, especially being on the road, I think of good times and feeling good and getting sunlight and vitamin D and exercise and seeing cool stuff. And then to be out there and being ill, that must be pretty hard,
Mhm.
so anyway, props to you for dealing with that. um what role does Roxy play in your travels?
Oh my gosh. She is my steadfast companion. She never I mean, she's grown too in the sense that she was a dog that was afraid of everything. She would be afraid if I turned on the blender. She still is kind of afraid of that, but she's sensitive to noise, and here I am, changing her environment every single day. And so my only her only constant was me. And so I think that it's made her and I closer together, and made her a really great companion. I don't have to worry about her on the road because she's not going to leave my side. You know, she's the camper and me are the only things, but she's grown because I've learned to um find some dog sitters, and I've explored with that. This is the first year that we've tried that out, and she's been good with it. So she's wonderful. I never feel lonely with her. I also don't feel that protected because she is a yellow lab that will give everyone kisses instead of sensing danger. Um, for instance, the other thing I learned about myself is I'm somebody who opens up their heart very easily to anyone on while I'm hiking, or anyone I meet. And I ended up in a situation where I met this man on a trail, and he turned out to be a very bad person. And thankfully, he finally got caught. But I could have been one of his victims. So I'm just, and she didn't pick up on that at all. So I guess she wouldn't, because he was really, really good at manipulating s- single women on the trail. And what I learned from that is that although I want to trust every single person out there, I have to have some red flags in my pocket. And I can't just, allow somebody to come into my space, into my life, and give without really knowing who this person is. So again, the universe was looking out for me, but
So what I mean, after encountering something like that, knowing that there was some possibility that you could have been a victim, what keeps you going out there? I mean, there's some people out there who think, oh, no way. If that happened to me, that's it. That's the end. I don't want to end up a victim. I don't want to. I can go on some trail and no one will ever hear from me again. What keeps you going? Why are you? I mean, are you afraid? And what keeps you continuing on your journey?
it's funny. I'm not afraid at all. I think what keeps me going is just my um, optimism that the humanity is mostly good. And in my 64 years of life, I've met one bad person, and I kind of look at it that way. Although my friends tell me you can't look at it that way. So I have a lot of friends that are very skeptical, and they sort of bring me back to Joe. You should, you know, they question, but I I don't know. I'm not worried about that at all. I mean, I do lock my camper at night, and I just try to be in places where I know that it's safe. And I
Mm,
don't allow myself to be like the first year I didn't know any better, and I was staying in um, truck stops with these huge trucks. And I felt, and here I am with my little camper, and that really wasn't a good idea. There's so many other places out there where I could stay where it's much safer. There's an app called Harvest Host where people who want to host uh, campers that are fellow campers, fellow RVers, and have homes across the country, or businesses like wineries or breweries or farms. They will host you to come stay for a night or two or three.
that's
And
cool.
you pay, if they sell a product, you pay them, you buy their product as a thank you. And it's a wonderful, safe way to camp. And I choose that. And I don't go to truck stops anymore or places where it's potentially dangerous. You just learn where it's safe.
How interesting. There's so many resources out there nowadays to kind of make your travel convenient and to kind of help you along with places to stay and where to go. That's really cool. How do you so with Roxy, you don't really feel any sense of loneliness out there? No? You
Not at all.
enjoy the solitude?
I do. And I also, now this is my fourth year that I've done it. So I've met people, I've been to places, and sometimes I revisit places, and I have, I have my daughters. So part of the trip is, you know, um, parking my camper and driving up and going skiing with them. And so I do spend time with my daughters out there
Mm,
as well. So I'm not completely alone
hmm.
cross country. I mean, I spend a lot of time, but I'm not. And I've also met people who also are fellow campers. I have a
So
friend who has a camper van that I meet up with. And so,
so in this nomadic lifestyle you're living, what are some of the routines that help you maintain these personal connections?
don't really have a routine.
No, no. Do you talk to
No.
people on the phone? Do you text still? Do you
Oh, yes, yes,
still say?
yes. Yeah, just normal connection through phone. Um, hey, where are you at? I'm here. Well, I'm here. Let's meet here. Or can you come up here? And let's go here. What's it look like in Utah right now? Let's go there. I don't do that with a lot of people. I just do that with a few,
Hmm.
and one in particular that I do it with. And with finding a friend that you can, I find that, and that I can do some adventures with, it makes my adventure go even further. Like
That's cool.
I'll do hikes and that I normally wouldn't do on my own, like hikes and like boulder climbing and scrambling. I mean, you don't have to go to that length, but I like that. That's my adventure.
Cool. All right. You mentioned something I don't think I've heard this term before. I like to hike also. I like to explore, but I'm relatively urban guy. Well, at least from my experience. But I mean, I'm branching out and learning. Um, what is scrambling?
So I don't even know if that's a real term. In Joshua Tree, there's beautiful, unique trees that are called Joshua trees,
Okay.
and but there's also these boulder fields, and they're all different size boulders, and it's also a famous rock climbing place. So people will come from all over, and they'll do technical rock climbing with ropes and gear. But there's also lots of places where you don't need any gear, and you just kind of climb up and over rocks and stuff. Um,
That's cool.
one experience I had in Joshua Tree that really helped me, just in my perspective of growth, was that I was with a friend and he said, "Do you want to go bouldering?" Like meaning scrambling. And I said, "Sure." Well, I'm from the seacoast, and I was picturing just jumping over rocks that are, out on a jetty. Um, I wasn't, I didn't expect to really go up high in height. And so when I met up with him and I started to scramble over the rocks, like trying to maneuver over these rocks and figure out what routes to go, I found myself very high and exposed. And I was like, oh, wow, I don't know if I can do this because I used to rock climb and I'm used to being safe on a rope, but not to be up at a height and any height like that without a rope. And he said, this rock is super grippy. You just need to trust your feet. And all I could think of is when I was going from stepping from rock over to rock, were these huge gaps with big drops, 20, 30 feet drops. And I really found my heart in my throat. Like I really had a hard time doing it. But every day we did it for 4 days in a row. And then by the fourth day, we climbed several peaks, and then of these rock piles, not like mountain peaks. And I stopped and asked my friend at the end. I said, "Wow, it's amazing. This seems to be a lot easier than it was the first day." And he said, "Joe, I took notice that on the first day, what the difference between that and now is when on the first day you were focusing on the gaps and less on the rock. And now you're not thinking of the gaps, you're focusing more on your technique of using the rock." And I thought, wow, what a great metaphor in life is to go through life. Don't focus on what you're good at, what you want to achieve, and go for that. Don't look at what is missing in your life, and don't focus on the gaps that are whatever's gonna hold you back. So I actually use that with my clients at work.
Yeah. Speaking of that, can you give a general idea what you do the 6 months that you're not traveling?
Yes, and I only do this part-time, but I work with people, adults that are in leadership positions or potential that want to be potential leaders in a company, and I help facilitate leadership skills um, for them so that they can grow and develop to become better leaders.
That's cool. Yeah, yeah, being out there on some of the small boulders we climbed up, it's clear that you had confidence. I haven't done very much of that before, but it's still cool. It's not like it was the Grand Canyon of gaps that we climbed over, but you have full confidence, and I guess anything with experience, you kind of get that. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, no, that's not pretty much it. Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting to kind of hike and do the little climbing with you. Those was pretty cool areas to climb anyway. What uh what experiences are you still looking forward to? You've done a lot of travel in the last four years, but what are you still looking forward to doing?
It's funny. I thought this past year, like I had no expectations. I didn't, because I figured that all right, this is my fourth year. What do I have to look forward to? And I actually don't, didn't know. So
Mhm.
I think that, but yet it was the best year of my life of the four. And I think it's because I, found moments where I could take extra steps in growth. And with me and Roxy, one in particular was that I'm not, she's getting older now. And, I haven't been able to explore national parks. So, um, I know I mentioned Death Valley and Joshua Tree, but there have been others now that I'm exploring that really, frown upon having dogs in the national park. You can't hike with your dog in the park, in a national park. But I've figured out how to accommodate hiking with her and just outside of the park. And then she's old enough now and I feel more comfortable. We're leaving her in the camper, and then I'll go and do a really big hike myself, or with a friend. So it's just little things like that that I'm finding that I don't know. I don't have any expectations. I'm just continuing to do it. And I feel like as I go along, I'm learning that there's more I can do. So it's a continue, as long as you stay open, there's always continued growth.
How does living that lifestyle teach you to be present?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I feel that I think I consciously try to, just from books and stuff that I've read, I'm constantly trying to be present every day, even when I'm not on the road, even when I'm back home here for the 6 months. Even uh, I read this book and it was talking about staying present. I think that's a huge thing. Is is to enjoy even the moment when you're brushing your teeth. Try not to think about what you're doing next. Enjoy the moment and think about the moment of brushing your teeth, so you brush your teeth really well. It's practicing being present and not. And I think that when I'm on the road, the way that my lifestyle is, it keeps me in that present moment.
So you mentioned books. I like to read. So I just curious on
Oh.
what are maybe two or three good ones that you can share with
Um,
me and the
so
listeners.
I listen to books on tape
Mm-hmm.
because I'm on the road.
Sure.
So I'd have to look in my library. Let's see. These are books that I read also for work. Hidden Potential by Adam Grant is a good one. Um,
Oh, I think I've read that one. Yeah.
yeah, Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. That's another really, that's the one I got that I got living. Brene Brown is a really good one. Positive Intelligence is a good one. Essentialism is another good one that taught me to think about in life, doing what is, we get caught up in saying yes to everything, and it's really important to think about more quality than quantity of what you do in life. And so these are things that I'm putting into practice with what I preach at work. These are things that I'm trying to also incorporate in my own life. And all these books, you can read them for work, but they're really great for your life, your personal life.
Right. So in your travels, um, well, let me circle all the way back around. So, how do you feel about your current life compared to your married life? You're married for a long time. You've only been not unmarried, ignoring the time before marriage. You've only been unmarried for about 4 years. How do you
Right.
compare?
Yeah, so
Mhm.
I was fortunately happily married for 30 years, and I wouldn't trade that for the world. And I'm sad that I'm not going to grow old with my husband. Have nothing but love for my ex-husband and forgiveness in my heart. And I think, first of all, that if I could give anybody advice, who's going through a divorce or have separated or any of that, to try really hard to not hold anger in your heart, because it only hurts you. Um, you can go through anger and sadness, but let it go, and it's taken me a long time with the sadness part. But I feel like this year was definitely a turning point for me with that. And, and so I've lived, I'm thankful that I had a wonderful, happy marriage, and I have two wonderful daughters and a wonderful dog, and I'm continuing my life. And I think that, you don't know what the universe is going to throw at you and how your life. This was a major, major shift for me, and it came out of nowhere, and and then so to have something happen, you just gotta pause and breathe and allow yourself to process it, and then hopefully look at it as an opportunity for change for yourself in a positive growth way.
And just that perspective, I'm telling you, Joe, that perspective is, all the only word I can think of is just love. Like, I mean, that's a sort of vibe you exude. I mean, no animosity towards your husband. How about your friend that that you were really close friends with? Do you hold any animosity towards her? Have you and have you uh have you seen her since then?
So I saw her once, and it was by surprise. I was totally taken off guard, and talk about the universe. I don't know if this was a planned thing on the universe's part, but we were living before when we were separated. I was still living in my house. My husband left the house, but he and I were in the same town, and he had moved in with my friend. And I decided to take Roxy for a walk on the beach. And it just happened that day that it was high tide, so there wasn't much beach to walk your dog, but it was really crowded, and there were lots of people with their dogs. And Roxy, I didn't find that to be a problem for Roxy and I, because Roxy is a lab and she just focuses on the ball. So I could throw the ball, and she would run between people to get the ball. It was just that, her focus. But once in a while, she does find a dog that she is interesting. And that day she found this dog, and she stopped and didn't have interest in the ball. She had interest in this one dog. And I thought, this is really interesting. I wonder why she's taken to an interest to this dog. And as I approached closer to to Roxy and this dog, I looked up, and there was my friend. And so she said, "Hi, Joe." And I didn't have time to react. The first thing I did was, and people are going to think this is crazy, but the first thing I did was I embraced her, because that's how I remember her, as a friend. She was in a close circle of my friends, and I just gave her a hug, and then I just stood there, and all of a sudden, I don't know what came over me, but tears started streaming down my cheeks and my face, and I didn't know what to say. And I just stood there, and like couldn't say anything. I finally said, I have no words. And she said, no, she first said, because it was a long time of neither one of us talking and me just crying. And, she just looked at me and said, "I'm sorry, Joe." And I still I couldn't say anything. And I just said, "I have no words." And she said, "There are no words." And then eventually, I think it got a little awkward, maybe for her. I mean, I stayed there, and she said, "Well, I'm gonna go." And that was it. I said bye. I went back to my friend that originally spoke to you about in the beginning of this podcast, a friend that has words of wisdom. And I told him about it. And I said, this is what happened. I said, I don't know. This is just what naturally happened. And he said that that was really the best thing that I could have done. He said, you showed that you don't have any ill feelings towards her, and then you showed your strength by not saying anything. That was his words. And so I said, oh, good. Well, that's good. I'm glad that that was good that it turned out that way.
I agree. I mean, it shows who you are because, I think that there will be people who listen who struggle internally with your reaction. And I think that some people, their their initial instinct would not at all closely reflect what happened with you, because something like that can be deeply hurtful for people, and there are a lot of people who don't know how to express that pain. Do you feel that your journey afterwards, after the separation and traveling and things like that, do you think that helped you find a space for acceptance?
Yes, definitely. Definitely, definitely. I now, like I said, this year was definitely a turning point. I thought, of releasing all the sadness and the hope that I had that maybe we would come together. Because during the 4 years, he came to me 4 times wanting to come back, and I've opened my heart to that possibility, but it was something that he turned away every single time from. So I think at this point I've reached a point in my life where now I'm really grounded and happy with myself. It's taken 4 years, but I really feel like I'm ready to continue my life, and I don't want to go back to the way it was. I've grown way too much, and I want to keep growing. And now, I don't think you told your listeners that you and I met on a service trip, but that's a new growth for me, is to go out into the world and help others that are less fortunate. And I feel a huge fulfillment with that, and meeting other people that are like-minded and have the same heart is a wonderful thing.
I agree. I agree. Well, this was a wonderful story. I mean, well, I mean, I hate to phrase it that way, but I mean, it's just interesting to kind of grow with you and hear your, since you're, young and didn't do a lot of traveling, to ended up in a world of self-discovery and independence, and figuring out who the heck you are and what the heck you want to do, and living in freedom and in peace, more than anything, peace and love, because there are a lot of people who wouldn't blame you for being angry and having animosity, but you choose peace and you choose love. And I just think that's the most wonderful thing ever. I just can't get enough of hearing that. I mean, in a world that doesn't really cater to that, I mean, there are more of us who are trying to share love, share peace, share growth, and be understanding. Um, you know, the world is slowly, hopefully starting to reflect that to some extent, and people like you are helping move that along. So, with all that said, okay, what is one weird, strange, or out of the ordinary thing that you have seen, participated, experienced, or anything?
Um, well, there's one thing that I experienced that, again, it goes back to me growing from, and but it's just an experience that I had when I was on the road camping that really tested who I was deep down. And I shared this experience with my like this experience was when I was with a friend, a close friend. In fact, you know who she is because she was on the service trip. Lindy, remember
Oh yeah,
Lindy?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So she has come out a few times and joined me on my camping trip and has spent like anywhere from a week to 2 weeks with me. And there was one moment where we were in Nevada and we were uh, trying to get to this campground. And it's wonderful to have someone, a friend along, especially someone that, she has a lot of great ideas and input that she can share with me. So it's great to have somebody to bounce things off of. And anyway, we were camping at about 4,000 feet. The or Yeah, and then the campground that we were going to was at 5,000 feet, and so and I knew that it had snowed the night before, but we were already at elevation at 4,000 feet where there was no snow in Nevada,
Hmm.
and so to get to this place, you had to travel 12 miles on a windy dirt road. And so I decided to read the reviews, and the reviews said, it's the road is well maintained. It's wide enough for two cars. Um, you know, it should be fine. All the reviews said it was fine, except for one review that said if you're towing a trailer, don't take this road. And so Lindy and I talked about it, and we said, listen, we're only going 1,000 feet more. It can't be that bad. We're, it's all the other reviews said the road's well maintained. I'm gonna ignore this one review. And so we started going on this road. What we didn't realize is that we had to get to 7,000 feet before we dropped down to 5,000 feet. And it had snowed the night before, just a light snow. And the road did start out as being as wide as two cars, but then it got very narrow, like you could only do one car width. So here we are, going up this windy dirt road with drop offs, like considerably. It was unbelievable views, but really incredible drop offs. We got to this one point and we were only 2 miles away from our destination, but we got to this one point where it was so steep and the light snow that had melted on the road, like kind of it melted into the gravel, and it caused it to be too soft for me to tow my camper. So as I was trying to make it up, I my wheels started spinning, and there was nowhere to go. But we if I went any further, I would have gotten stuck. So we we had to back the camper down on this narrow, steep road that had these drop offs. And we, you know, we had to try to keep our composure, but we deep down inside, I think we were panicking. And it's interesting when you get to that point where, what are we going to do? We are stuck here. Um, at least we felt like we were stuck. And then and Lindy's like, who can we call? Who can we call? And I kept saying to her, there's nobody we can call. We're not completely stuck. We just have to back down. And it was so scary because as I tried to back down slowly, my every time I put on the brakes, my whole camper would slide because of the mud around my tires. And it was heading, it was definitely, it wasn't just a back down straight, it was a back down curve. And it was just really tested our character, our deep within us. At one point, we just had to keep our composure, but what we decided was Lindy was going to step outside of the camper and watch to make sure that my back tire of my trailer didn't go off the side of the cliff. And if that goes, then everything's going. That's where the heaviest part is. And I didn't want her to go over with me. And I think she was thinking, what if it goes over? How am I going to save her? So it was really trying. And it took about what felt like forever for us to back down, inch our way down. And I don't know, somehow there was going to be a point where we were going to come around a corner and then go up backwards. And there was no way we could go up backwards. So I had to chance it at this one spot where maybe we can turn around. We kind of jackknifed the camper, but we sort of made it. And at that point, we just, we were holding our breath the whole time this was happening, and holding back emotions. And there at one point she was a little panicky. I stepped out of the car and grabbed her and said, we've got this, and she's like, oh, I know we do. But deep down, I wasn't sure if we really had it. I just had the confidence. We both had to exude that confidence that somehow we're going to get out of this. And somehow we did. We managed to turn around and make it down. And even driving back down, the seeing what the drop-offs were, she couldn't even look out her window. It was that scary. And so it was a moment that of an experience where I really felt like whatever strength I had came out. And so I felt really great about it. And the next day I wrote my journal and I looked it up, and she said to me that, if I'm ever caught in a situation like that ever again, I want you by my side. And that made me feel really good. And
That's
I
so
definitely
cool.
want her too.
That is so cool. What a story. How did you feel directly after that? When you got back and the situation was over, how'd you feel?
Well, we got down to a place where it was level enough that we pulled the camper in off the road and decided this is where we're going to stay. And I said, let's take a walk and just breathe. And so we crossed the street and kind of bushwhacked up this hill, and we got to the top. And I said, I was feeling good. I mean, we held our heads in our hands, and we laughed, we cried, we were relieved. We had all those emotions come out. And then now we're taking this little hike. And I said to her, and I was feeling good at that point, but I think she was still in her body and mind, still trying to deal with the whole thing emotionally, because I said to her, hey, let's go up to that peak and like go over that ridge and then hike down around that way and try to find our way back to the camper. And she looked at me like she was going to kill me. And she said, are you kidding? After all that we just did? She's like, no, I want to get right back. I want to go back the way we came, and I want to get to the camper. So we did that. I honored what she was feeling at that moment, and which was like, I've had it up to here with adventure. I want to just get back to the camper. And we had a nice dinner that night. I think we made a cocktail for ourselves, and we celebrated that we survived it. And we also took a long time to process it, which was really good for us. So
You're extraordinary. I mean, to be able to reset that quickly. I mean, like after being, I mean, it was so tense that it sounded like you were prepared for the worst, right? Or is that
I
correct?
don't know what I was prepared for, but I definitely knew that I wasn't going to allow us to be stuck up there.
Hmm.
It was up to me because I was the only one that could drive it. So I had to get in that. I had to be put into that position.
Mm.
Once again, you put yourself in positions where you don't think you have the strength, and then you get through it. It just makes you stronger. And
And that
gosh, I
event
just
made you.
highly recommend people to do that.
Well, I don't think you had
It's-
much choice in that one. I mean, you didn't know what to expect, but that's props to you. That's super, super cool. Wow, what a crazy story. And that's yeah, and you two made it to, that's another time the universe was looking out for you. You had a partner there during that. I mean, imagine if you were alone. I mean, you would have got it done, but I mean, it was for you to do that and grow. Um
yeah, yeah.
so anyway,
Um,
so
yeah,
go ahead.
thanks for letting me share that.
Yeah, for
No, I was
sure.
gonna say thanks, just thanks for letting me share. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So one final question. Um, the world is
Okay.
full of possibilities for self-discovery. What message of encouragement would you give to the listeners who are looking to break free from routine and embark on a journey of personal transformation for themselves?
I think I think the biggest message I could give is take it one step at a time. Everybody is on their own separate journey, and I think as long as you know that the next step you take is going to be a little bit more out of your comfort zone, then that's a good thing for you. And I think that as long as you keep moving towards that, and not staying in a place of comfort. Comfort, by comfort I mean, where you don't, this is where you want to be and you don't want to go any further. I think that's important. It's important for all of us to continue to grow. I mean, I'm still growing at my age, and I feel like I still have a lot more to learn. And I think that if you take that mindset and keep that mindset in with you, you're going to always find opportunities to grow, and and you'll welcome that. You'll find more fulfillment in your life and enjoy your life, and always keep love in your heart. Always take that step with an open heart, and because and trust. Don't feel that you need to plan out every single thing. Trust that there may be a higher power, whatever you believe in, is watching over you. And
That's wonderful. And
but
one of
have
the
a red
things,
flag in your pocket, because
yeah, yeah, well, that's I think that's important too. But one thing you said was that you're still learning, and I think we all are until the day we leave this earth. We're all learning, and I've learned so much from you today, and I so appreciate you sharing all this. I was looking forward to it, and I think that you've said a lot that it would be help people, and it means a lot that you're willing to share this. It means a lot. I'm just happy to see you. I love you so much. You're just such a wonderful person, and I look forward to talking to you again. But I appreciate you coming on to the Novel World Travels podcast.
thank you, Kenny. I really appreciate it too. It's much better than I thought it would be. And
I told you,
it's not as scary. That's another growth thing.
you're just talking to a friend.
That's right, and a friend you are, and I'm looking forward to cultivating our friendship.
For sure.
So thank you,
For
Kenny.
sure. Thanks for joining me on the Novel World Travels podcast. Subscribe on your favorite platform, leave a review, and share it with your friends. Join me on my community on Facebook. That's / Novel World Travels, and Instagram, Novel World Travels. And join me on my webpage, which is novelworldtravels.earth. And remember, life is outside. And if you can't get there, join me and my friends on the Novel World Travels podcast. I love you all.